The low, persistent alarm dragged Lieutenant Jack Reynolds from his sleep. Red emergency lights pulsed through his small cabin aboard the research vessel Horizon. He fumbled for his comm unit. "Reynolds here. What's happening?" "Unknown object on intercept course, sir," replied the voice of Ensign Parker. "Captain wants all senior staff on the bridge immediately." Jack dressed quickly and made his way through the corridors of the Horizon. The deep space research vessel had been mapping an uncharted sector for the past 3 months without incident. Until now. When Jack arrived on the bridge, Captain Wells was hunched over the main scanner with Chief Engineer Tom Brooks. "What do we have?" Jack asked, taking his station at the science console. "Some kind of escape pod," Captain Wells said without looking up. "Definitely not human design. Moving erratically." Jack studied his readings. Life signs aboard. Faint, but present. "Can you identify the species?" Wells asked. Jack shook his head, then paused as new data appeared on his screen. His eyes widened. "Wait, this can't be right." He double-checked the readings. "Captain, if these scans are accurate, we're dealing with a Vexnar." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Vexnar, apex predators from a distant system, known throughout settled space for their lethal hunting abilities and hostile nature. Most humans had only seen them in educational videos or holograms. They were living weapons, multiple limbs ending in natural blades, razor-sharp exoskeletons, and defensive mechanisms that could spray acid when threatened. "Are you certain?" The captain's voice had dropped to a near whisper. 97% match to known biological markers, Jack confirmed. "And it's injured. Badly." "Recommendations." Wells looked around the bridge. Security Chief Patel stepped forward. "Standard protocol is clear, sir. We maintain distance and report to Fleet Command. No contact." Tom nodded in agreement. "The Vexnar have attacked every human vessel they've encountered. We should destroy the pod now." Jack stood up. "With all due respect, that's not true. There have only been 3 confirmed encounters, all in disputed territory. We don't know if they attacked first or were defending themselves." "This isn't a xenobiology debate, Lieutenant," Patel snapped. "Those things are killers." "It's alone and dying," Jack insisted. "As a research vessel, we have an obligation." "To keep our crew safe," Wells interrupted. "I'm inclined to agree with security on this one." Jack's mind raced. Before joining the Horizon, he had spent years studying predator species across multiple worlds. His theories about their intelligence and complex social structures had made him unpopular among more traditional scientists. "Captain, this could be our only chance to learn about a species we've misunderstood," Jack pleaded. "If it dies, we learn nothing. If we save it, we might make a breakthrough in interspecies relations." Wells frowned. "And if it kills us all?" "We have containment protocols. The medical bay has a quarantine section with reinforced barriers. We can keep it sedated until we're certain it's safe." The captain considered this, then sighed. "Prepare the tractor beam. We'll bring the pod into the secondary cargo bay. Full hazard protocols, and I want armed security at all times." He pointed at Jack. "This is your project, Reynolds. If anything goes wrong, it's on you." "Understood, sir. Thank you." As the crew prepared for retrieval, Jack studied the pod's erratic movements. Something had attacked it. Weapons fire had damaged the small vessel's engines. Whoever was inside wasn't just injured. They were running from something. An hour later, Jack stood in full hazard gear as the cargo bay doors sealed behind the small alien craft. Through the pod's damaged hull, he caught his first glimpse of the galaxy's most feared predator, not attacking, but lying wounded and vulnerable. And in that moment, Jack knew his life was about to change forever. Jack stood behind the reinforced glass of the quarantine chamber, watching the sedated Vexnar. The medical team had worked for hours to stabilize the creature. Its dark exoskeleton glistened under the bright lights, 6 limbs occasionally twitching as it fought the sedatives. "How long until it wakes up?" Captain Wells asked, keeping his distance from the glass. Dr. Miller, the ship's chief medical officer, checked her tablet. Hard to say. Its metabolism is burning through our sedatives faster than expected. Could be minutes, could be hours. And the restraints will hold. Wells' voice betrayed his concern. We use the strongest polymer cables we have, Tom said. But honestly, Captain, we don't know. No one's ever contained a conscious Vexnar before. Jack studied the alien's features. Despite its fearsome appearance, the blade-like extensions on its forearms, the ridge of spines along its back, the mandibles framing a mouth full of serrated teeth, there was something almost elegant about its form. Evolution had crafted a perfect predator. I'd like to stay when it wakes, Jack said. Wells shook his head. Absolutely not. We observe remotely until... A sudden movement from the quarantine chamber interrupted him. The Vexinar's eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, snapped open. They were startlingly bright, an iridescent purple that seemed to glow from within. In one fluid motion, the creature assessed its surroundings, then pulled against the restraints. The cables groaned but held. A low, vibrating sound filled the chamber as the Vexinar's exoskeleton plates rubbed together, creating a noise somewhere between a growl and a rattle. Everyone out, Wells ordered. Remote observation only. Jack didn't move. Captain, please. This is first contact with a conscious Vexinar. Let me try to communicate. Before Wells could answer, the alien's attention fixed on Jack. Its head tilted slightly, and the rattling sound changed pitch. One restrained limb extended toward him, not in threat but in what? Curiosity. It's trying to communicate, Jack whispered. Or identifying its first target, Paddle countered, hand on her weapon. Jack stepped closer to the glass. The Vexinar's eyes tracked his movement. He raised his hand slowly and placed it against the barrier. The creature stared at this gesture, then mirrored it, pressing one clawed appendage against the glass opposite Jack's hand. Reynolds, back away now, Wells ordered. Captain, look at this. It's mimicking. That shows intelligence, not just predatory instinct. Dr. Miller moved beside Jack, fascinated despite her fear. The brain scans did show complex neural activity. The Vexinar suddenly lunged against its restraints, making everyone jump back. One of the cables snapped. Alarm sirens blared. That's it, said Wells. Increased sedation levels and... Wait, Jack pointed to the monitor displaying the medical readouts. Its vitals are spiking. I think it's in pain. Indeed, the creature wasn't attacking. It was writhing. A thick, dark fluid seeping from a wound that had reopened along its side. The restraint is cutting into an injury we missed, Dr. Miller confirmed. Jack made a decision. I'm going in. Lieutenant, that is a direct violation of... Wells began. But Jack was already at the airlock, cycling through to the quarantine chamber. The teen watched in horror as he approached the thrashing alien. I'm trying to help you, Jack said softly, holding his hands up to show he carried no weapons. The Vexinar went still, all 4 eyes locked on him. Jack moved slowly to a medical cart, selecting the spray bandage designed for emergency field trauma. He demonstrated its use on his own arm, then gestured to the creature's wound. For several tense seconds, no one breathed. Then, incredibly, the Vexinar relaxed its posture and extended its injured side toward Jack. With trembling hands, Jack applied the bandage to the alien's wound. The bleeding stopped. The creature made a new sound, a series of clicking noises that somehow seemed less threatening. I think it's saying thank you, Jack said, smiling slightly. Behind the glass, the crew watched in stunned silence as history unfolded before them. The first peaceful contact between human and Vexinar, bridged by one act of compassion. 2 weeks had passed since they brought the Vexinar aboard. Jack sat cross-legged on the floor of the quarantine chamber, separated from the alien by only a thin line marked on the floor. The security team had protested this arrangement, But after several days without incident, Captain Wells had reluctantly agreed to reduced security measures. Like this, Jack said, arranging small colored blocks into a pattern. Your turn. The Vexenar, which Jack had started calling Krell after hearing the alien repeat a similar sound when referring to itself, studied the pattern. Then, with surprising delicacy for its clawed appendages, Krell rearranged the blocks into a more complex variation of the same pattern. Jack laughed. Show off. Through the observation window, Dr. Miller watched with fascination while recording notes. It's remarkable, she said to Tom, who had joined her. In just days, they've developed a rudimentary communication system. Jack's always had a way with animals, Tom replied. Miller shook her head. This is far beyond animal intelligence. Look at the complexity of those pattern responses. Krell isn't just mimicking. It's extrapolating, theorizing, responding with original thoughts. Inside the chamber, Jack had moved on to picture cards he created showing basic objects and actions. He pointed to one showing a ship. Ship, he said clearly. Your ship. What happened? Krell's mandibles clicked together, a sound Jack now recognized as frustration. The alien selected cards showing danger, weapons, and death, then made a sweeping gesture with two arms. Hunters, Jack guessed. Your ship was attacked by hunters. Krell's eyes brightened, the Vexnar equivalent of a nod. But why Wold? Jack began, when the intercom interrupted. Lieutenant Reynolds, report to the bridge immediately, Captain Wells' voice commanded. Jack found the captain reviewing a transmission with a grim expression. Sir. Wells gestured to the screen. Orders from Fleet Command. We're to divert course to Outpost 47. The Vexnar is to be transferred to military research facilities. Jack felt his stomach drop. Research facilities. Sir, Krell is intelligent, communicative. This isn't some specimen. Krell. Wells raised an eyebrow. You've named it now. That's what it calls itself, Jack insisted. Captain, please, we're making incredible progress. If we hand Krell over to military research, we follow orders. Lieutenant, Wells interrupted sharply. This isn't a debate. The military wants to understand Vexnar biology and potential weaknesses. Given their threat level, I can hardly blame them. But they're not the threat we think they are. Jack's voice rose. Everything we've learned suggests the Vexnar have been defending themselves against hunters who target them for sport or research, exactly what we're about to do. Wells' expression hardened. That's enough, Reynolds. I've given you considerable latitude with this project, but my patience has limits. We reach Outpost 47 in 3 days. The Vexnar will be transferred. That's final. Jack returned to the quarantine chamber, his thoughts racing. Krell immediately sensed his distress, moving closer to the boundary line. Bad news? Dr. Miller asked quietly. Jack nodded, then selected cards to explain the situation to Krell. The Vexnar's reaction was immediate. Its exoskeleton plates flared, and a low vibration filled the room. It understands, Miller whispered. Krell suddenly moved to the wall panel controlling the chamber's environmental systems. With astonishing speed, its clawed fingers tapped out a complex sequence. The lights flickered, and the ship's AI voice announced, "Quarantine protocols temporarily suspended for system maintenance." Jack and Miller stared in shock. "Did it just hack our systems?" she asked. Before Jack could answer, Krell had moved to the main computer terminal. More rapid movements of its claws, and suddenly the screen displayed a star map with a location highlighted. "What is it showing us?" Miller moved closer. Jack studied the coordinates. I think that's the Vexnar homeworld." Krell placed one clawed hand on Jack's arm, the first direct contact between them. The meaning was clear: trust. In that moment, Jack made his decision. He couldn't betray this trust. Somehow, he had to help Krell escape before they reached Outpost 47, even if it meant risking everything. They changed course, Jack said, examining the navigation chart Tom had smuggled to the quarantine chamber. We're not heading to Outpost 47 anymore. Tom looked nervously over his shoulder. Military vessel intercepted our signal. The dreadnought Relentless is coming to collect your friend directly. Arrival in less than 12 hours. Krell moved beside them, its purple eyes studying the display. Over the past days, its communication with Jack had improved dramatically. Using a combination of simple words, gestures, and the ship's computer, they had achieved a rough understanding. Military. Bad, Krell said, the words clicking through its mandibles in a halting approximation of human speech. Cut, dissect, learn weaknesses. Jack nodded grimly. That's what I'm afraid of. Dr. Miller entered the chamber, her face tense. Jack, the captain is looking for you. Commander Pierce from the Relentless just made contact. He's leading their specimen retrieval team. Pierce. Tom's face paled. Nathan Pierce. The Butcher of Centauri. The very same, Miller confirmed. Known for his xenophobic views and aggressive handling of alien species. Jack paced the room. We need to move faster. How's the escape pod? I've made the modifications, Tom said, but getting Krell there without being seen will be nearly impossible. Security is doubled since the course change. Krell suddenly straightened, head tilted as if listening. Danger coming, it warned. Humans with weapons. Close. Seconds later, the door slid open. Captain Wells entered, flanked by 4 security officers with rifles raised. Lieutenant Reynolds, Wells said coldly, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. Dr. Miller, Engineer Brooks, return to your stations. Captain, please. Jack stepped forward. You can't hand Krell over to Pierce. You've seen the intelligence, the communication abilities. What I see, Wells interrupted, is an officer who's become dangerously attached to a specimen. The Relentless will dock in 11 hours. The Vexnar will be transferred. You 3 will face disciplinary hearings when we return to Earth. Krell moved closer to Jack, its posture defensive, but not threatening. Sir, Miller tried, Lieutenant Reynolds is right. The research potential. This isn't about research anymore. Wells cut her off. This is a military operation now. Commander Pierce has made it clear the Vexnar possesses information vital to Earth's security. Jack's mind raced. What information? The location of the Vexnar homeworld, Wells answered. Apparently, they've been massing forces for an assault on human colonies. That's a lie, Jack shouted. Krell showed us their world. They're not planning any attack. They're hiding, protecting themselves from hunters. Wells' expression wavered slightly. The military intelligence says, who benefits from a war with the Vexnar? Jack pressed. The military contractors. The weapons manufacturers. The same people funding these hunting expeditions. One of the security officers shifted uncomfortably. Captain Wells noticed. Officer Davis, is there a problem? Davis lowered his weapon slightly. Sir, my brother works salvage. He told me about ships that come back with Vexnar trophies. They'd brag about hunting them. Said the military pays good money for specimens, alive or dead. A tense silence filled the room. Wells looked troubled. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. The lights dimmed to emergency red. What now? Wells demanded, tapping his comm unit. The bridge officer's panicked voice came through. Captain, the Relentless has accelerated. They're preparing to dock now. They've overridden our systems and... The transmission cut off. Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor. They're here already, Tom whispered. The quarantine chamber door slid open. A tall man in a black military uniform stepped in, flanked by soldiers in full combat gear. Commander Pierce, he introduced himself with a cold smile. I've come for the specimen. Krell moved protectively in front of Jack, exoskeleton plates flaring in warning. Wells stepped forward. Commander, this is my ship. Your scheduled arrival has been moved up. Pierce interrupted. New intelligence suggests your crew has been compromised by alien influence. his gaze fixed on Jack. "Lieutenant Reynolds, you're under arrest for treason and alien sympathizing." As the soldiers advanced, Jack realized they were out of time and options. Whatever happened next would determine not just Krell's fate, but possibly the future of human-Vexnar relations forever. The escape pod tumbled through space, its emergency thrusters firing sporadically. Inside, Jack worked frantically at the controls while Krell curled into the small space not designed for its large frame. "Hold on," Jack shouted as the pod shuddered violently. The hasty escape from the horizon had damaged the navigation system. They were flying blind, pulled by the gravity of a nearby planet. Hours earlier, in the chaos that erupted when Commander Pierce attempted to seize Krell, Captain Wells had made an unexpected choice. He'd ordered his security team to stand down and helped create a diversion. 5 minutes, he told Jack. "That's all I can give you." It had been enough. Barely. Jack, Krell, and surprisingly, Dr. Miller had fought their way to the escape pods. Miller had stayed behind at the last moment, promising to destroy their records and buy them more time. Now the pod's hull glowed red-hot as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across the console. "Impact imminent," the automated system announced. "Brace for crash landing." Krell wrapped 2 of its limbs around Jack protectively, using the others to anchor itself to the pod's frame. The last thing Jack saw before they hit was the barren, rocky landscape rushing up to meet them. He woke to the hiss of escaping air and the acrid smell of burned electronics. Pain shot through his leg when he tried to move. Something warm dripped into his eye, blood from a gash on his forehead. "Krell," he called weakly. A shadow moved above him. Krell's face appeared, mandibles clicking with concern. The Vexnar had torn open the crushed door of the pod and was gently pulling Jack from the wreckage. "Hurt," Krell said, examining Jack's injured leg. "Need help." Jack looked around at the desolate landscape. Gray rocks stretched to the horizon under a dull orange sky. "We're on Proxima IV, he realized. "Mining colony. Somewhere." Krell helped Jack to his feet, supporting his weight. The alien's exoskeleton showed several cracks from the impact, dark fluid seeping from beneath the damaged plates. "You're injured too," Jack said. "We'll heal," Krell responded, human more fragile. They had limped perhaps a kilometer when the sound of engines growled overhead. A small transport ship circled once, then descended toward them. "Hide," Jack urged, but there was nowhere to conceal Krell's massive form on the open plain. The ship landed 50 meters away. The hatch opened, and a figure in dusty mining coveralls stepped out, plasma rifle raised. "Don't move," the miner called. "What in hell's name is that thing with you?" "Please." Jack raised his hands. "We need help. I'm Lieutenant Jack Reynolds, Earth Fleet. This is Krell. We mean no harm." The miner kept the rifle trained on them, eyes wide with fear at the sight of Krell. "That's a Vexnar. They're killers." "No," Jack shook his head. "That's not true. Everything we've been told about them is wrong." Before the miner could respond, a distant boom echoed across the landscape. They all turned to see a military shuttle breaking atmosphere. "They're hunting us," Jack explained quickly. "If they find Krell, they'll kill him and arrest me. Please." The miner hesitated, then cursed under her breath. "Get in. Quickly." Inside the transport, she introduced herself as Mara, lead geologist at Mining Station 12. "You've landed yourself in trouble, Lieutenant. This whole sector's crawling with military patrols lately." "They're after the Vexnar," Jack explained, as Krell curled uncomfortably in the cargo area. "They want to study them, weaponize them." Mara glanced back at Krell. "And that one's different. He saved my life. Multiple times. They're intelligent, peaceful, unless threatened." Mara flew low over the rocky terrain, avoiding main routes. "There's talk among the deep miners," she said hesitantly. "Rumors of a place called Haven. A sanctuary for those running from the military. Aliens mostly. Humans who help them." Jack felt hope stir for the first time since their escape. "Can you take us there?" Mara shook her head. "Don't know where it is exactly, but I know someone who might." As they approached the distant lights of the mining station, Krell moved forward, placing a clawed hand gently on Jack's shoulder. "Friends," the Vexnar said, indicating Mara. "More like you. Not all humans hunters." Jack nodded, touching Krell's arm. "We'll find a safe place. I promise." Behind them, more military ships broke atmosphere, searchlights sweeping the barren landscape in expanding patterns. The hunt had begun. The underground transport shuddered as it sped through ancient tunnels beneath Proxima IV's surface. Jack leaned against the cool metal wall, watching Krell interact with their unlikely rescuers. 3 weeks had passed since their crash landing, and everything had changed. "We're approaching the final checkpoint," announced Dax, their guide, a tall, thin alien with translucent skin that revealed the slow pulse of multiple hearts. "Haven's security is thorough." After Mara had sheltered them at her mining outpost, she contacted underground allies who arranged this journey through a network of smuggling routes. They'd narrowly escaped capture twice when military patrols raided settlements looking for them. The transport slowed, then stopped. Armored doors slid open, revealing a security station manned by a mix of species, some Jack recognized, others completely foreign to his knowledge. A human woman stepped forward. She wore simple clothes, but her bearing suggested military training. Her eyes widened at the sight of Krell. "By the stars," she whispered, "you actually brought a Vexnar here." "This is Krell," Jack said, standing protectively beside his friend. "He's no threat." "I'm Director Thorne," she replied, studying them both. "Forgive my surprise. In 10 years running Haven, you're the first to bring one of their kind." Krell stepped forward, keeping its posture deliberately non-threatening. "Seek sanctuary," it said carefully. "Humans hunt my people. This human," it gestured to Jack, "showed truth. Not all enemies." Director Thorne's expression softened. "That's why Haven exists. Come, both of you." They passed through the security checkpoint into a sight that took Jack's breath away. The tunnel opened into an enormous cavern, at least a kilometer across. Artificial sunlight streamed from panels in the distant ceiling. Buildings of various architectural styles filled the space, connected by walkways and small transport pods. Gardens and parks dotted the landscape. And everywhere, aliens and humans moved together, seemingly at peace. "Welcome to Haven," Thorne said, pride evident in her voice. "Home to over 5,000 refugees from 98 species, all escaping persecution, experimentation, or exploitation." "It's incredible," Jack murmured. "How long has this existed?" "Nearly 15 years. Started as a small hiding place for a dozen escaped research subjects. Grew as more found their way here." As they walked through Haven's central plaza, residents stopped to stare at Krell. Some showed fear, others curiosity. A small child of an avian species actually approached, looking up at the imposing Vexnar without fear. "You're big," the child chirped. Krell lowered itself to the child's level. "Yes, but not dangerous to friends." Thorne led them to a medical facility where doctors examined Jack's still healing leg and Krell's damaged exoskeleton. "Your friend needs specialized care," the doctor told Jack. "Vexnar biology is complicated." "Can you help him?" Jack asked anxiously. The doctor smiled. "Actually, yes. There's someone here who can." Minutes later, Jack watched in astonishment as another Vexnar entered the room. Smaller than Krell, with lighter coloring, but unmistakably the same species. Krell rose instantly, a series of clicks and whistles erupting from its mandibles. The newcomer responded in kind, both Vexnar touching claws in what Jack recognized as a greeting of deep significance. "This is Nex," Director Thorne explained. "She escaped from a military research facility 2 years ago. We thought she was the only one who had survived captivity." Later, in private quarters assigned to them, Krell explained to Jack what he had learned. My people scattered when hunters came. Hidden colonies across many worlds. Next knows of 12 survivors here in Haven. Jack sat heavily on his bed. 12. Out of how many? Once, millions, Krell said quietly. Now, perhaps thousands hiding. Hunted for sport, for science, for parts. Jack felt sick. I'm sorry. Not your fault, Krell responded. You showed different path possible. A communication panel on the wall chimed. Director Thorne's face appeared. Lieutenant Reynolds, we've intercepted military communications. Commander Pierce has discovered Haven's location. They're deploying a full battle fleet. Jack looked at Krell, determination replacing his fatigue. How long do we have? 3 days, maybe less. Then we need to prepare, Jack said. And I need to send a message to everyone. The command center of Haven buzzed with frantic activity. Jack stood at the central console, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species. The main display showed the approaching military fleet. 15 warships led by the dreadnought Relentless. They'll be in attack range within 6 hours, Director Thorne reported grimly. Our shields won't withstand that firepower for long. Jack nodded, his face set with determination. Then we stick to the plan. Is the broadcast system ready? Tom, who had deserted his post on the horizon to join them, gave a thumbs up from the communication station. Ready to transmit to every colony and outpost in the sector. If enough people see the truth. It won't stop Pierce, Thorne cautioned. He'll claim the footage is manipulated. Krell stepped forward, now wearing a translator device developed by Haven's engineers. Truth has power, the Vexnar said. Even against weapons. The last 3 days had transformed Haven. Instead of fleeing, the residents had chosen to stand their ground, converting the sanctuary into a fortress. More importantly, they had prepared their message to the galaxy, irrefutable evidence of the military's lies about numerous alien species, including the Vexnar. Jack checked the time. Let's begin the broadcast. Tom activated the system. Jack stepped before the camera, Krell at his side. My name is Lieutenant Jack Reynolds of Earth Fleet Research Vessel Horizon, he began. What you're about to see will contradict everything you've been told about interspecies relations, particularly regarding the Vexnar. For the next hour, they transmitted footage showing the peaceful coexistence within Haven, testimonies from refugees who had escaped military experimentation, and data proving the systematic campaign to demonize certain species for profit. Most powerful was the sight of Krell interacting gently with children of various species, demonstrating intelligence and compassion that defied all propaganda. We are not asking for war, Jack concluded. We are asking for truth, for recognition of sentient rights for all species, for an end to the hunting and exploitation that has driven so many to hide. As the broadcast concluded, the first responses began flooding in. Thousands of messages from across human colonies expressed shock, outrage, support, but the military fleet maintained its course. They're still coming, Thorne said, watching the display. Pierce isn't backing down. Suddenly, the sensors showed new ships entering the system, civilian vessels by the dozens, then hundreds, positioning themselves between Haven and the military fleet. What's happening? Jack asked, stunned. Tom laughed in disbelief. Mining transports, commercial haulers, private ships. They're forming a blockade to protect us. Among the civilian ships, Jack recognized the horizon. Captain Wells' voice came through on the communication channel. Lieutenant Reynolds, it seems you've started quite the revolution. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session after your broadcast. They're demanding Commander Pierce stand down. On the main display, they watched as the military fleet slowed its approach, caught in an impossible situation. They couldn't fire on civilian ships without confirming everything Jack had revealed. Hours later, a council representative arrived at Haven. The grand chamber filled with residents of all species as she addressed them. The Council has reviewed the evidence presented by Lieutenant Reynolds and the Haven community, she announced. We have ordered a full investigation into military actions against sentient species, particularly the Vexnar. Commander Pierce has been relieved of duty pending charges. A cheer erupted through the chamber. Jack felt Krell's claw gently touch his shoulder. This is only beginning, Krell said. Much work remains. But it is a beginning, Jack replied, smiling. 3 months later, Jack stood on the observation deck of a diplomatic vessel approaching Earth. Beside him, Krell watched the blue planet grow larger in the viewport. Nervous? Jack asked. Yes, Krell admitted. First official Vexnar ambassador to Earth. Great responsibility. Jack nodded. The new interspecies cooperation treaty won't fix everything overnight. There are still those who fear what they don't understand. Like you once feared my kind. Krell's mandibles clicked in what Jack now recognized as the Vexnar version of a smile. I suppose so, Jack laughed. Good thing I was willing to see beyond that fear. As they prepared to dock, Jack thought about their journey, from a damaged escape pod to changing the course of galactic history. All because one human had defied expectations and befriended the galaxy's most lethal predator. And in doing so, had discovered that lethal had never been the right word at all.